There has been, don't you notice that there's always words of the day or words of the moment? And years ago, it could have been the trigger words or the trendy words. We're talking more about trauma and your trauma, and now the words seem to be talking more about flow and being in the flow and your flow. And I love it because it really is highlighting where humanity's at and what's important to us and our desire to empower ourselves and to live better, I guess. And I think when a few years ago we were kind of all wanting to stand on our own 2 feet, and there was a lot of kind of voicing and efforts to show everybody that your voice was important and your own self was very important, and don't let anyone take it away from you. And that's really cool. And what I think is really happening now is people are really inviting the awareness that you can live life by letting go and being in the flow. And what that means is something very relatable, is mindfulness. That was the other word I was trying to think of. There was something before trauma and it was all about mindfulness. So it was mindfulness a few years ago, then it was about kind of overcoming trauma and realizing stuff. And now we're kind of talking more about flow. So there's this kind of cool evolution that humanity goes on to actually understand who we are and what we're doing here and who we can become and how to enrich in our lives. So to me, it all is very yummy and has great reasons and purpose if directed in the way that serves you. Now, what does that mean? Well, the thing is that everything serves you really because you're going to learn. But if you get stuck in the blame, if you get stuck in the belief that there's something wrong, well, then you're kind of focusing on that a lot. There's something more to fix. There's something else that happened to me that I've got to uncover. Maybe it's you that I am angry at, so I've got to do work on myself because of you. I don't know. There's all these different word choices and ways of us learning how to evolve. What works for me, which doesn't mean it works for everybody, but what works for me is really realizing what we're thinking about and how what we think about is actually the filter that we see our world through. And so if you can understand what you're thinking about or become more conscious of that, you have the ability to kind of understand yourself a bit more. So instead of trying to understand other people and the world and all that stuff, is trying to work out why you are the way you are, but without super analyzing it. Just to see what you think about means that you can actually change that, which is phenomenal, because that means you are actually empowering yourself once you become conscious of your thoughts and your beliefs. And when you realize that some things are just a belief, you realize that there's now opportunity to change it. You can change a belief. You can stop believing it. It can be proved wrong. It can be proved that it needs to change. you know, the sky's blue. There's evidence everywhere, but when you keep going up in the airplane, there's no line where the blue begins, right? Like a kid's painting, like there's a blue sky on top of the page. Well, when you go up in an airplane, that line doesn't exist. So you start to realize that perhaps the sky's blue, not just because of a line or a color, but perhaps because of something else, you know? So your story starts to change with more proof or more information. So I have a great story. Everybody was blindfolded. There was 4 people blindfolded, and they'd never, ever heard of this animal before. And suddenly they were asked to describe it. Now, one person touched an area of the animal and said, "Oh, the animal's really soft and smooth." And somebody else, blindfolded, was touching another part of the animal and went, "Oh my gosh, no, it's hairy and spiky." And someone else was going, "What are you talking about? It's really thin and like grainy." And then someone else goes, "Are you kidding me? It's cold and like concrete, like smooth, like tile." And they're all like going, "What are you talking about? We're all touching the same animal." They took off their blindfolds and they were all touching the same animal but different parts. The animal was an elephant, so the smooth trunk, the warm fuzzy belly, the spiky tail, or the thin ears. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, the truth is they're all right and they're all wrong because they would defend themselves that their animal is correct. So then they're wrong because they don't have the whole picture. But what I'm trying to say with that analogy is for us to not hold absolutes, for us not to hold on to this belief that this is it. Because as our experience of life changes and as our perspective opens, perhaps our view changes and then our truth changes as well. So always be willing to explore, learn, surrender ideas and beliefs, and be the student to learn more forever. Don't you think?